Oh wow, that turned out fantastic. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show, for a staggering $9,300. They call this one Mermaid Burst. Now, we've seen a few things like this before, but it's a nice dark blue with kind of a greenish blue interior. But just check out that quilt top. It's one of those really widely but heavily figured ones. You can tell it's going to have a lot of movement to it. It's not going to be completely stagnant. It's got the perfect bubbly top for this kind of a finish. So that's two great things going for it, but can you guess what the third is? Look at that, we have an F-hole on it. But that's not just any sound hole, it's bound. There's lots of Florentine and Bantam Les Paul customs that have an F-hole on it, but typically they do not get the binding on them, and that is a super high-end premium feature. I'd imagine we don't see it too often because that's a lot of labor to get those little pieces of binding in there. Not even things like the diamond cut ones where it would be easy did they bother doing that. So that's personally what got my click onto this one, especially because if you look closely, there's only one F-hole on this. That's very unique. But we get our regular 7-ply binding around the top, and to match with that, you get your regular Les Paul custom style pickguard, and the gold really just pops on this. And then if you go up to our headstock, our special feature here is the House of Guitars 60th anniversary truss rod cover. Other than that, no colored logos or anything like that, but do you see the side of the headstock? That's not blue. We flip the thing over to the back and you can see, okay, it's the mahogany body, but that's kind of an orangish hue. And then I was really hoping it would have this, but the colors were throwing me off. It's the 5-piece neck, 3 pieces maple, 2 stripes of walnut, and it's heavily figured and they stained it that orange color in kind of an interesting way to blend the mahogany and the maple together without them looking too obviously different. I would have loved to have seen like a volute or have a little mermaid decal back here, but we just have a regular serial number, CS404011. But it's looking at this thing in the case at a slight side profile shot that you can take in why they wanted to call this one Mermaid Burst. I would have never thought an orange back with a blue top would have looked good, but it does. It's not every day I've seen something that we haven't seen before. However, due to the fact that it has an F-hole, obviously they have to chamber it out, so that's going to be to taste. Do you like that or not? 7.5 pounds. I'm kind of surprised not to see a Crimson Division COA with this one, because that thing is fine. But you can look through all the detailed made-to-measure specs here. I was a little bit saddened to see they just went for the standard 490R, 498T, didn't throw something exotic in there like Super 74s. Yeah, anybody want a new guitar day that thing, I will happily take some nice B-roll shots of it. These guys have had an awesome 60th anniversary. We've talked about their figured Siberians in previous episodes that honestly have very similar specs to them. They also did a few in the figured root beer. The back of the body was really light, but yet the neck turned out a little bit dark, but again, they're trying to mask the color differences between the woods. Then it was a couple of weeks ago that we looked at the burl top, which is a unique figuring pattern that you don't see every day. But just like the other ones, it's got a unique mahogany back, but they left the neck natural on that one. It's amazing what the made-to-measure program can do. Here was a pretty crazy custom order as well. So we've got a 54 Les Paul for $9,000. So typically speaking, that looks like this. You don't see many R4s because it's a regular Les Paul standard. It just has a wrap tail and you've got the dual P90s. Were you expecting this? All right, so we upgraded to the staple in the neck. We've got the P90 in the bridge, but we still retain the wrap tail. But it's Les Paul customified. Now I might say, hey Trogly, isn't this a BB4 reissue, the Les Paul custom style? I would argue no, because it's got a maple top yet. The Les Paul customs have the mahogany, whereas the standards would typically still have the maple, although it'd be covered over so you don't know if it's super figured. You could really argue it either way, but have you ever seen an Alnico 5 staple custom with a purple flame top before? I certainly don't think that there's that many of those out there, especially with a wrap tail piece. I certainly had to save this one in my watch list because I don't anticipate seeing another one of these in the future. I would have considered picking it up for a review and demo, but the black back was like, come on, if you're gonna have that much fun on the front, why are you gonna make the back boring? A fingerprint scratch magnet. But hey, the yellow interior case helps pop all that. But it seems like it was officially called a 54 Les Paul Custom F, which is kind of hard to wrap your mind around, because usually the F or Q for flame or quilt doesn't change a guitar much, but this one you're significantly changing the DNA of the original BB4 reissues. But that one's listed at $9,000. quite pricey. There's another cool one that popped up this evening on Reverb for honestly not a bad price, $4,500 plus shipping. He called it Emerald Burst. You don't see this too often. It's like a green into a black. If you're interested in checking out something similar, I actually have reviewed one of these before. It was from 2022. It had Super 400 inlays to make it a little bit extra special. If I remember correctly, I had to import this one back from Japan. But that was a really cool piece. It even had the greening on the sides. Highly suggest that video. I know what you're thinking. Hey, Trogly, why'd you ruin this one? Because it just has regular custom block inlays. Well, that's because when you flip it over to the back, you're going to notice this is an Access custom, so completely different animal. So this one has the black back and sides, if that's more your style, but it's going to be a thinner Les Paul. But it's my favorite version of the Access. It does not have the Floyd Rose. It actually still has the ABR1 bridge, believe it or not. And being just a slightly used one, you still have the ebony fretboard, so it's not back into the Richlight era or anything. You get the Apex head carve, you still get the full-size Grover tuners, and you get a Gibson custom shop medallion. I think that's worth picking up, because you won't find that every day. But the theme of tonight's episode is just absolutely gorgeous examples, and this Yamano Special Order 1960 reissue definitely fits that category. So at first, it appears to kind of be like a faded, washed out brown, somewhere in between a quilt and flame territory. That's a tricky one. I'm curious, what would you guys classify it as? If I had to choose just one, I would personally say quilt because it has the veins in it that flame typically doesn't have in this kind of structure. But there's enough of it that it still looks flamey. But you gotta be careful on guitars that look like this, especially when they have the antique lacquer around it, because sometimes they actually start as blue and the blues just faded off of them. And we've talked about that enough on the show. Flip it over to the back. We can actually tell this one was intended to be brown, and that's what made me want to share it in tonight's episode. But to back up the whole Yamano thing, they've got some paperwork here. And if you don't know what that means, it's just a well-respected dealer in Japan known for accepting only the best of the best. However, it looks like it's spec'd out as a 5A quilt root beer, but I don't know if I agree with that ranking. Because 5A quilt makes me think of what we looked at the first one of this episode. Not something where you can go, is that quilt or flame? That one's pretty pricey at $6,000 plus $200 to get it from Canada now. So this next one I've picked out in case you don't quite have the budget for that. It's one of the old Gibson High Performance 2 Les Pauls in Mojave Fade for $2,300. Now hear me out. As far as these go, that is a fantastic top. However, there are some quirks you gotta be able to live with to appreciate the old High Performance series. First things first, there's no pickup rings. The pickup's actually secure in the back. So that's what these screws are right here. But it's kind of like a Les Paul Custom Access in the fact that you've got your cutaway over here and you've got it right there. No Apex head carve though. But then you get your dip switch in here that lets you do all the coil taps and splits. You can choose which version of each you want. But then you also have to like the slightly wider neck profile that these have stock. However, what's really cool is this has the very short-lived version of the aluminum flight case that has a handle on the top and wheels at the bottom. I have not had this version of the case before, but this one actually appears to have been gigged out. It's got nicks and dings. It's been hit against the ceiling a couple of times. If what we just talked about intrigues you, I actually do have an old video on the hot pink fade version of this. So we tear that apart in that episode, get all the nitty-gritty detailed specs. They're interesting. As long as you go into it with the right mindset, you're going to have a good time. But if you think this is going to be a regular Les Paul standard, you're going to be sorely mistaken. Here's a regular 1960 reissue that I thought down at $5,000. It's pretty cool. I think they just need to change their leading photo to this. It's like a very light indigo top, but yet the cream plastics kind of bring out the natural flavors of the maple, but does match well with the cream reflector knobs. But then when you flip it over to the back, it's TV white. Interesting combination for your neck and body. Looks like we got some staining leaching into the body, so you'd have to be able to live with that. But that's a pretty cool side profile shot and a nice combination of colors. This is the perfect shot right there. You get to see all of it. But what's rather fascinating to me is if you go back to this photo, it does not have fret nibs, so it was refretted at some point for larger frets, although that is not disclosed. So I suppose there might be a small chance that it was custom ordered that way, fret nibless, but I would want to see the traveler sheet for that. Alright, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.